Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of philosophy, and we're discussing regarding the Stuart Closet philosophy, the chapter number 8, the General Pathology of Homoeopathy, the biggest chapter from Stuart Closet, and having a lot of meaning is because he tried to explain the concept of pathology in relation with the homeopathy. He tried to explain how this bacteriology is known to Hahnemann 50 years prior. He tried to explain the concept of infectious diseases was known to the Hahnemann without having any microscope in his hand. He explained over there that Hahnemann considered pathology in a dynamic manner in the form of chronic miasms, which are causes of the material pathology. And this concept is rather difficult for the allopaths to understand. Hahnemann was the person who used to understand many things. He was botanist, he was zoologist, and as he was knowing that Cuvier had made the classification of animal kingdom, Carl Linnaeus had made the classification of the plant kingdom, he also considered that it is the need of the time that diseases should be classified. And that's why he classified the diseases into 4 varieties, specifically the chronic diseases into the 4 types. First variety, in which he has labeled by the name of occupational diseases or drug diseases. So, if you go with the organ of medicine, you can call it as artificial chronic diseases or the iatrogenic chronic diseases, pseudochronic diseases. And that one variety, if you remove, whatever remaining is there, that remaining is the true chronic diseases, and they are again he classified. The first one, the venereal one, that is the syphilis. The second venereal one was the psychotic, and third non-venereal in origin was sore. And with this, he has started explaining about the causes of chronic diseases, causes of material pathology, and it becomes very simple for us to diagnose that this pathology, in which cause it goes, and how we can treat that. This aspect was the gift given by Hahnemann to us. And because of which today, whatever we are treating, the different pathology, it is only because clear understanding about the pathology is in the form of miasms. Yesterday, we have come to the conclusion of this classification, and he started explaining about somewhat that most important cause during Hahnemannian time was the SORA. 7/8 cases were of psoric in origin, and 1/8 cases were related with the venereal origin, the syphilis and psychosis. Out of which again the 60% are syphilitic and 40% are gonorrheal. So this is what we have discussed up till now. Let us go ahead with one more thing, that is the doctrine of latency, and how Hahnemann was knowing that, and modern science has accepted later, very much later, the concept of latency also. So let us see what he wants to explain in doctrine of latency. Hahnemann taught that SORA, like syphilis and psychosis, may remain latent for long periods until circumstances awakens the disease slumbering within and thus develops its germs. This doctrine of latency was strenuously opposed for a long time, but is now endorsed and taught by the highest authorities in regard to syphilis, gonorrhea, and tuberculosis. Hahnemann was the first person who said there is a period of latency. That means, simple thing, that we have the tubercular bacilli in our body. Unless and until the secondary causes are for, these tubercular bacilli cannot do anything to you. In regard with SORA, the mite is there inside your body. Unless and until circumstances are available, this mite cannot do any harm to the human being. Though there is a big period between the infection which enters inside the body and the symptoms to develop. This is the big period to which Hahnemann labeled by the name of doctrine of latency, and no one was accepting his theory. But later, modern medicine also accepted that many people who have tubercular bacilli in their body, when you test the Montos test or when you do the Montos test, but it doesn't mean that patient is having the tuberculosis. Unless and until circumstances are for these tubercular bacilli inside your body cannot harm you. And then they accepted, yes, what Hahnemann said was correct. So, every concept related with the pathology was explained by Hahnemann of 50 years prior to it. It is very important thing. He was knowing the things very clearly regarding it. And modern science was not accepting at that time because it was way ahead. It is not possible for them to digest. Behring and other authorities on tuberculosis now hold that the infection often occurs in infancy or young life and remains later until later life. Hahnemann's doctrine of latency is therefore confirmed by the modern research in regard to the tuberculosis, as it has long been the of syphilis and for shorter period of the gonorrhea. And then for regarding many disorders, this doctrine of latency was accepted by the modern science. And this Hahnemann told a way back. The oldest monuments of the history, says Hahnemann, show the Sora. Even then, in great development, Moses, 3,400 years ago, pointed out several varieties. In Leviticus chapter 13 and the chapter 21, verse 20, where he speaks of the bodily defects which must not be found in a priest who is to offer sacrifice, malignant itch is designated by the word garab, which the Alexandrian translators in Septuagint translated with the Sora Agria, but the Vulgate with the Scabies Jugis. The Talmudic interpreter Jonathan explained it as a dry itch spread over the body, while the expression of Eliphad is used by Moses for lichen, tetter, herpes. So there were a lot of names given to this terminology, the Sora. What Hahnemann wants to explain and what Close want to point it out is the ancientness of the Sora. This comes in Bible, this comes in many old literatures with different names. It was there since long time. And that's what he wants to explain, that Sora was the original cause and it was first cause, in fact, of the chronic diseases, which was there right from ancient times. The psychosis and syphilis came later. The commentators in so-called English Bible work also agreed with this definition. Calmette, among others, saying leprosy is similar to an inveterate itch or with violent itching. The ancient also mentioned the peculiar characteristic voluptuous itching which attended each then as now, while after the scratching a painful burning follows. Among others, Plato, who calls each glip, glypicron, while Cicero remarks the dulcido of scabies. So there were many names given to these scabies. Someone says it leprosy, someone says it scabies, someone says it by any tetter. Many varieties of names were given to this scabatic eruption. At that time, Moses and later on among the Israelites, the disease seems to have mostly kept in the external parts of the body for its chief seat. This was also true of the malady as it prevailed in uncultivated Greece, later in Arabia, and lastly in Europe during the Middle Ages. The nature of this miasmatic itching eruption always remained essentially the same. So this is very clear. This was there since long time and having the manifestation on the skin in the form of itch, in the form of eruptions, in the form of scabatic eruptions. It is incidental, therefore, with ancient form of leprosy, with the Saint Anthony's fire or malignant erysipelas, which prevailed in Europe for several centuries and then reassumed the form of leprosy. Through the leprosy, which was brought back by the returning the Crusaders in the 13th century. After that, it spread over than ever. It was gradually modified by the greater personal cleanliness, more suitable clothing, general improvement in hygienic conditions, until it was reduced to a common itch, which could be and was more easily removed from the skin by external treatment. So, this itch was so ancient, it was there, which was labeled by the name of leprosy. But as the hygienic conditions were settled, it was improved. There was people started wearing the good clothes, clean clothes. These those eruptions have changed in their expressions. It has changed and it has reduced in appearance. And ultimately, later, these eruptions remained on the skin in the form of little bit itch, little bit irritation, and that labeled by the name of scabies. So it was the same since ancient time. It was on external most aspect. The basic theme or conclusion is that the Sora is the most ancient form of the disease. But Hahnemann points that the state of mankind was not improved thereby. What he says? State of mankind was not improved. Only the external manifestation they have changed there. In some respects, he says, it grew far worse. For although in ancient times the skin disease was very troublesome to its victims, the rest of the body enjoyed a fair share of general ill. Moreover, the disgusting appearance of the lepers caused them to be more dreaded and avoided, and their segregation in colonies limited to the spread of the infection. This element of safety was lost when the disease assumed its milder appearing form, as the itch, without losing in the slightest degree of infectious contagious character. The infectious fluid resulting from scratching contaminated everything in touch and spread the disease broadcast. So this was the disease which was communicable from one person to another person. Yes, its severity was reduced, but ultimately it was spreading from one person to another person because of communication, because of using the utensil, and it has spread all over the world. And that was an era during Hahnemannian time. It was rampant. It was there everywhere. It was expressing everywhere. And that was the time where 7-8 cases found to be of this psoric manifestation. So this is doctrine of latency, which he wants to explain over there. Doctrine of latency followed by the concept of Sora and how Sora was ancient. These are two important things he wants to highlight over there. And then he wants to turn towards one more concept, which Hahnemann told very early, the concept of metastasis. Let us go. Metastasis means it is given over there. We'll go through it, and if there is any query, we'll discuss. Metastasis. Many superficial critics have ridiculed the idea that the itch, known even before Hahnemann's day, to be due to a minute but visible animal parasite, the Acarus scabiei, was the cause of any other than local disease of the skin. They did not consider that even if this were true, it might be the host, the carrier, or another smaller infectious microorganism in the same way as the flea or the mosquito are carriers of the infection. Wittedin Swift, 1667 to 1745, could have taught them better. So naturalists observe a flea has smaller fleas than on him prey, and there have smaller still to bite him, and so proceed ad infinitum. He is talking about the concept of Sora and how this Sora from the skin enters inside the body somewhere else, produces diseases inside, and it is transformation of disease from one organ to another organ, to which Hahnemann's concept of metastasis was applied. This even This scabies is caused because of invisible creatures, but which are responsible to produce this disorder. This is what Hahnemann have said. No one was accepting. Everyone was saying that this is not so. But Hahnemann was so clear. And later on, people looked after the under the microscope, the cause of it in the form of Sarcoptes KB or Acarus KB, labeled by the name of Sarcoptes KB, a mite. See, he was way ahead without having microscope, without having anything. He has explained as how this scabies is caused. And then he also explained that if these eruptions, if you treat locally, it enters inside. Then it goes to vital organs. And his concept of going the disorder from the less important to big and greater important organ, to which he labeled by the name of suppression. Now it is labeled as a by the name of metastasis. It is the same concept which is there, but allopathic science considers metastasis is only through the channels, and earlier it was accepted in the form of thrombus by allopathy. Later on, they have started accepting it in the form of cancer also. So let us go what he wants to say. Sora has thus become the most infectious and most general of all chronic miasms, says Hahnemann. The disease, by metastasis from the skin caused by external palliative treatment, attacks the internal organs and causes the multitude of chronic diseases, the cause of which is generally unrecognized. And Hahnemann said these psoric eruptions, which appears in web spaces, which appears on skin, if you treat them locally, it enters inside. Then it goes into distant or internal organs and causes a disorder over there. This suppression is nothing but the metastasis. Many have been skeptical of the danger of metastasis of chronic external or skin diseases, and this skepticism has led to dire results. It would seem that physician who dreads and fully realizes the danger of repercussion or the metastasis of the eruptions of acute measles or scarlet fever, with its well-known serious and often fatal consequences in the brain, kidneys, or lungs, could not consistently doubt the possibility of the same kind of result from the metastasis of chronic eruption. And later on, modern science has accepted that if you suppress the measles or if measles is maltreated, it can enter into the brain, and then it produces a complication in the form of subserosal panencephalitis, SSPE. See, this was accepted by modern science very later, 50 years, 60 years later. Hahnemann told this concept very early. This is the concept of metastasis, original metastasis of Hahnemann. He labeled it by the name of suppression. Modern science labeled it by the name of metastasis. But ultimately, the idea is same, that if you treat it locally, it enters inside, goes to the vital organs, damages the vital organs, and many complications. If you go with the measles, mumps, and if mumps were maltreated, it enters into the breast or in the testes, producing a swelling over there, tumors over there. This is another thing. So we have in Materia Medica, in the pulsatilla, that metastasis to testes or breasts after the mumps is the pulsatilla. So this concept was, metastasis concept was Hahnemannian concept, accepted by modern science a very later. Innumerable facts observed by the competent physicians for centuries past and confirmed in many cases by modern research make such a position untenable. Metastasis of disease is today an accepted fact in the medical science. And now medical science has accepted, yes, there is a concept of metastasis. What Hahnemann told way back. Our knowledge of metastasis rests scientifically upon our knowledge of embolism. Embolism, says by American textbook of pathology, rests essentially upon the anatomic and experimental investigation and teachings of Virchow. Embolism, says this authority, is an impaction in some part of vascular system of any undissolved material brought there by the blood current. The material transported in this method is an embolus. So it is embolus if there is thrombus formation in the lower extremity in the greater saphenous vein and a part gets detached and it moves through the circulation, settles somewhere else. Then they label it is embolus and it settles, produces disease over there. This is metastasis from the original thrombus. The concept was accepted. But here a material channel is there. Many times you don't get material channel. Many disorders you don't get that. Hahnemann explained that concept of metastasis, that when you suppress it at the skin, it goes into the brain, it goes into the lungs, it goes into the GI tract, it goes to the extremities, it goes into the rheumatism, anywhere. And if it happens, that is a secondary symptom of a psora. It is nothing but the metastasis. Metastasis is the transference of disease from one part to another, not directly connected with it. This is the definition given by him. And this is the MCQ, one must know. Of the several kinds of emboli, the textbook of pathology mentions tumor cell, number 2, tumor cells. Emboli composed of living cells capable of further proliferation occur in connection with malignant tumors. In carcinoma and sarcoma, isolated tumor cells or the cell groups may reach the blood current either indirectly through the lymphatics or directly when the tumor is in its growth, penetrates the wall and projects into the lumen of the blood vessel. On the lodgement, cell proliferate and give rise to secondary tumors. So, Ebola is one concept, then tumor cells, how they get transmitted from one place to another cell, again the concept of metastasis. And third, animal and vegetable parasites, bacteria of various kinds as well as protozoa and the embryos of few large animals parasites may be transported by circulation and act as emboli and settle somewhere. So we can have emboli of the entamoeba in the brain also. So this is the metastasis, concept of metastasis, but this is the through the channel, through the blood vessel. Modern science never accepts the dynamic transportation. They accepts only whatever is visible through the channel. So this was first concept which was accepted by the modern science. Then Hahnemann's teaching is thus elucidated and confirmed by pathology. The infectious, parasitic, primary and typical microorganism of psora, driven from skin by local treatment, finds a ready route to deeper tissues, structures and organs through the capillaries, the lymphatics and the glandular system and the nervous system. Here it develops its secondary specific form and character according to its location and predisposition and environment of the individual, giving rise to vast number of secondary symptoms. Hahnemann was the first one who considers infectious source of the disease. All three myosomes has infectious source. Psora in the form of each mite, the psychosis in the form of Neisseria gonorrhea, syphilis in the form of Treponema pallidum producing syphilis. So all of them were having the original infectious origin. And then if you suppress their primary manifestations, which are always on the surface, in psora it is in the form of scabies or itch on the skin. In psychosis, it is in the form of gonorrhea and pigwarts externally. In the syphilis, it is in the form of primary chancre on the genitals. Everything is on the surface. And if you try to locally treat them, it enters inside, producing a disorder more and more to the deeper structure and produces any type of disorder depending upon that individual, depending upon the susceptibility of that individual, depending upon the predisposition means myosomes of that individual, depending upon the environment of that patient, depending upon the constitution of that patient. So it settles somewhere else. That is what is the concept of metastasis from Hahnemannian point of view. And last point, to conclude this concept, he explains, so great a flood of numberless nervous symptoms, painful elements, spasms, ulcers, cancers, adventitious formations, dyscrasias, paralysis, consumptions, crippling of soul, mind, body, were never seen in ancient times when the sora mostly confined itself to its dreadful cutaneous symptoms, leprosy. So, till the sora was presenting, nothing was there. Till the external manifestations were rampant, everyone was free. But once you tried to suppress that sora by local means, it enters somewhere else and it has produced a disorder over there. Only during last few centuries has mankind been flooded with these infirmities owing to the causes of first mentioned Hahnemann's chronic diseases. And this is last 2 centuries. These internal disorders have been increased vastly. Now people have suffering more from internal disorders than the external manifestation. Now we have all pathologies, and the result of pathology is only because the suppressed sora in the form of suppression of each, suppression of skin manifestation. And this was the biggest reason behind the causes of material pathology. So Hahnemann uh, tried to explain all those concepts, and Close has elaborated it in over there, all those concepts. So today we have learned the doctrine of latency as well as doctrine of metastasis, both the concepts which Hahnemann was knowing way before modern science accepted them. So that's all regarding the things. Today we'll stop over here, and tomorrow we'll continue with the identity of SORA and tuberculosis. A big thing that is the sorosyphilitic miasm. SORA on one side and sorosyphilitic, that is tuberculosis on another side. Both things we can learn over there in that remaining latter part of the book. So this is the close. This is interesting part which she tried to explain over there in detail. So that's all for today. Thank you being there. Today it is not possible to take the Materia Medica lecture. Tomorrow we'll continue with both the lectures. So thanks a lot, and we'll have a chat tomorrow.